Okay. All right. And um, I will now put up the presentation and I'll walk you through.
Avram, since it is being recorded, do I need to get my bottle of tequila ready?
No.
It's always
So
useful to have your
this is a no alcohol event. Okay. Just tell me that you see it.
Yes.
Yes.
Okie
got
doke.
it.
All right. And I'm going to put it up as a presentation. Okay. All right. So, Lori, I'm not sure if you were part of the presentation last week when I made the initial, the initial, kind of pre-presentation to the executive committee.
I was not.
Okay. So I was going to apologize to you and if you were and to Bill and Jamil who heard this. There are some slides that were in that, and but there's a lot more. And so let me get started. All right. So first of all, to everybody by extension on the executive committee and to the Torah Ruach and Limud the working group, thank you for your time and for your confidence in us and for inviting us into your congregational family. That's very meaningful to us, and people have been very welcoming at all levels. So Lori administratively, Donald leadership-wise, Annette and Bill in terms of the campaign group, and all the people who we spoke to and communicated with over the course of this initial process. Just a word of background. This is information you already know. Over 100 years ago, Beth Am Israel was founded in Southwest Philly as a community dedicated to learning and connection with Torah at its center. So the thematics of Torah remain until today, as they should. And as we reflect on our past and advance to the future, we are determined to ensure that our special community continues to flourish for us, for our children, and for the future. The campaign, the Torah Ruach and Limud campaign, builds upon the congregation's enthusiasm for creation and innovation in programs for children and youth, adult education, and in family and community learning. The campaign will enable and does enable the congregation to endow and advance a longstanding dedication to learning, lifelong learning, formal and informal, personal and communal. And additionally, as part of the whole construct of this broader activity, it will also mark the 100th anniversary of the congregation. And to celebrate the commitment to learning, Beth Am is also creating a Torah scroll unique to the congregation, written together with a scribe, but in its own hands, to celebrate the beauty of learning and a spiritual community. In terms of the PCA activity, the Lapin Group was invited into this and retained by Beth Am Israel through to guide the congregation through the Torah Ruach and Limud endowment campaign. The first phase it was determined together was to conduct a pre-campaign assessment, which is a series of confidential interviews, to kind of take the temperature of the congregation, how much people knew, what about the priorities most resonated with them, and then issues relating to image and perception of the congregation, and then personal leadership and participation. The PCA helps to shed light on the feelings of members regarding current connection, long-term engagement, and this campaign in particular. 39 households were identified as prospective participants. The 3 clergy members were also included initially, but they were not ultimately interviewed just because we had so many that we kind of went over. People were presented with 22 quantifiable and anecdotal questions tailored to Beth Am Israel, asking about the congregation's image and perception, the individual interviewees' alignment with the campaign's priorities, and their thoughts about campaign leadership. And then finally, as I said before, personal leadership and participation. A statement of purpose, basically a preliminary document stating the goals of the campaign was developed together with the Torah Ruach and Limud Working Group, and as a preliminary introduction to the campaign and its interconnectedness to the 100th anniversary and the creation of the Torah. The statement was shared with each interviewee in advance of their meeting, typically a day or two in advance. I did it closely like that because I wanted to minimize people sharing it around because it is preliminary. And I didn't want people to come and see, well, this is the campaign. No, it's the first shot at describing the campaign. The majority of those approached were happy to participate in the pre-campaign assessment. One person initially declined and then ultimately did participate. Two were unable to participate due to work schedules, and three did not respond. So the response rate was really phenomenal. Our initial goal was 20 to 25. We ended up with 31 interviews with a total of 51 individual participants. 17 were in person and 14 were remote. Just further in terms of background, in terms of years of involvement with Beth Am Israel, you see here about 16% were involved or present or members 5 years or less, about 20% between 5 to 10 years, 16% 10 to 20 years, so about half of the people, individuals and households that we spoke with were involved less than 10 to 20 years. About 2/3 of that cohort less than 10 years or 10 years or less, and the balance, the balance, the 48% was between 20 and 30 and more than 30 years. So we had a pretty good balance in terms of the scope of the study and drawing from different places. In terms of people's perception of leadership, we asked if an individual, if we're speaking to a couple, if anybody was a member of the board. We knew this in advance. We asked if people a member of the board, if one or both, and about or perceived to be part of the leadership of the congregational community. 90% felt that they were either committee or board leadership or executive committee leadership, past president, and 10% did not. And then the breakdown of board to committee was about 3 to 1.
I'm sorry, Avram, is it current board members or
No,
they've been on the board at some point?
Board member, over half of the people were involved less than 10 years. So it's over the last 5 to 7 years, and then also historic members who may have served on the board at a generation before. We spoke to board members. We spoke to past presidents from the 1990s. So that we really got a pretty decent picture.
Thank you for clarifying.
Sure. In terms of the we asked, any given week, any given month, how many times do you walk through the door or participate? These days you have to participate in a significant synagogue activity because so much is still remote. And you see here about many of the people did say about once a week. This reflects the kind of the spiritual nature of the congregation, because most of that was either board members that came or executive committee members that came for meetings, and typically people that came for Shabbat services or came for minyan. And as you look across from left to right, you see once a month and multiple times a month, or kind of the quick runner-ups, and then the people that were there multiple times a week, again, were typically board members that came, or young parents with kids that they were bringing back and forth. There were very, very few that articulated only a few times a year, like for high holidays. There were obviously a handful, but most people seem engaged, and that's part of the intangible that we're looking for. because it's the intangible that that drives people to give, or that
So
supports them.
what was that last column
The last column, the
after a
short
few
one,
times a year?
just a
What's
few
that
times a
last
year,
green?
like spotty, like not on any pattern. They don't, you know, they'll come, you know, when they're around. Some people are not around all year. You know, and some people just, you know, are not showgoers, but they, you know, it didn't necessarily, there's no correlation between, between, you know, necessarily, the size of their gift and how many times they walk through the door, but we want to get a sense of, you know, people's connectivity to the institution. We don't see numbers like this that often.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, um, and in terms of the question specifically, how well is Betham serving you, your family? You saw 2/3 saying that that they felt that they were being well served. That Betham is meeting their needs. You know, and the needs of, there are no two families with exactly the same needs. You know, and or exactly the same expectations, which feed into the answer. You know, about 19 or 20% indicated, you know, medium, 10 not so much, and 5%, you know, didn't feel, you know, that they were able to answer that, or chose not to. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I have a lot of questions.
sure.
That 10% not so
Yeah.
well, did they articulate in what ways we're
Oh, yeah.
not serving
Oh, yeah.
them?
Oh, yeah. And I'd be happy
Okay.
to share them with you offline if you like. Yeah,
Okay.
just and it wasn't, you know, it was more in terms of their own personal situation. It wasn't, you know, typically wasn't, well, you know, it's this person's fault, or you know, somebody took the last piece of fish at Kiddish or something like that. But it, you know, it was, you know, more, and you know, I apologize for the sarcasm, but more in terms of their own personal situation.
Okay.
Okay. Um, and you know, then we asked, you know, again, trying to get a handle on the intangibles. The clergy and leadership get the congregation. We asked the same question with regards to you know, the clergy and professional staff, and then the lay leadership. And you see, you know, there's kind of a similar breakdown. There's some difference. Let me deal with the clergy and staff first. They felt, you know, that you know, between agree strongly and agree somewhat, in terms of the clergy and professional staff. You know, you have what, 92%, you know, feeling that the clergy and staff, you know, have a good handle on the needs and expectations of the congregation. 4% disagree. 4% of you know, 58 responses is about 2.5 responses. So you know, it's not, you know, there's no perfect answer to anything, and 4%, you know, just didn't feel like they wanted to answer, or didn't quite know. You know, perhaps they were the people that you know, weren't as engaged. In terms of the board and lay leadership, the one difference in the responses, is the don't know, that oftentimes people are just not connected to the board. They don't understand, you know, what's going on around the board table. They're just not engaged there. You know, that their activity, their level of engagement and connectedness doesn't necessarily extend to knowing what happens around the board table. And you know, on the one hand, this is a pretty typical situation. A pretty typical situation in synagogue situations, you know, where you know, not everybody knows what's going on around the board table. But there were also, you know, and I'm sure this is not news to board members and lay leadership around this table, that the issue of communication came up from time to time. That people felt that communication, you know, from the board, from the leadership to the congregation, could always be better. Um, um, so in terms of, you know, you know, we asked, if you were to think about the totality of Beth Am Israel, you know, everything together, the people, the programs, the participants, the building, which people loved, you know, what were the 1 or 2 or 3 strengths that you would see really the most positive things about the congregation? And you see here, you know, what kind of teased out. People felt it's very welcoming. People felt, you know, the leadership, and you saw that in the previous slide, that people felt the leadership was positive and knew what they were doing. There was a great atmosphere. It's beautiful. It's pleasant to be there. It's a pleasant physical plan. People love the building, and that the again, you know, there was a sense of spirituality. People liked the community engagement, and people felt welcome. You know, that they felt that it's something that really spoke to the personality and the culture at Beth Am Israel, and something that they could very much connect to. In terms of challenges or weaknesses, you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. And you know, this is something that that is very important and goes directly to the kind of the core of this campaign. It also reaching back to you know, information noted previous, you know, in terms of the clergy in particular, that they felt that that Chazan Herald created a beautiful venue and a beautiful vibe, you know, for people, and was attractive, and you know, you know, not to the exclusion of the rabbi, but you know, his leadership was noted. But in terms of, you know, where the challenge is, you know, and again, it goes directly to the essence of this campaign, that there's a need to engage more young families. And kind of the culmination of that first part of image and perception, we asked, well, if tomorrow, you know, if you kind of amble down the hill, and instead of this beautiful building that everybody seemed, you know, to be very connected to and really typified people's connection to the congregation, if that whole campus, you know, that small campus was gone, poof, disappeared, didn't run out of money, didn't go out of business, didn't fail, just gone, poof, vanished. What difference would it make? And you see here, you know, the answers. You know, that overwhelmingly people said it would make a big difference to themselves and their families, you know, and to the congregation and to the community. The community would lose you know, an option that was not necessarily available in other places. There were you know, there were a handful of responses you know, that went outside of that, but you know, overwhelmingly people would feel a real gap and a loss. And you know, that speaks to kind of the passion of people that people have for the congregation. That was really the only negative that was discussed. You know, I guess other than, you know, what do you see as challenges, but this is the only question that's stated in the negative, and you see the response that it elicited. All right. In terms of the campaign itself, as I said before, we prepared a statement of purpose, which was that preliminary description of what the campaign would accomplish successfully. And the first question in this section about priorities, you know, if you know, if the congregation were to begin a campaign based on what you see on this page, okay, what you read on this page, all right, would you support it, yes or no? And you know, 3/4 said yes, no qualification, and then a couple of yes buts. You know, yes, but you know, I'd be supportive of some areas and not the other. And you know, you know, 2%, you know, and again, 2% here is like one person. You know, is, you know, not yet. I need to see a plan. I need to see the roadmap. I need more information. You know, 1 or 2 people said that Torah is very important. A handful of people, you know, raised the point of, you know, they weren't quite understanding what the purpose of the Torah was in all of this. So I think that needs to be explained. And you know, 4% here, which again is about 2.5 people, you know, said no, but I guarantee you that they're likely persuadable, or at least you know, some of the 4% are persuadable. And then this question spoke to the culture and personality of the congregation. You know, and we haven't yet talked about dollars and cents, but if a campaign of significance were to be presented to the Beth Am Israel community, how would the congregation respond? about a third said, people will be supportive. 3% it said needs to be driven by a vision, and and it always does, and not only a vision, but responding to the 24% that said needs clear messaging. It needs to have a purpose, and clarity as to what that purpose is and what it's going to take to get there, and the roadmap to achieve it. About 10% indicated that it's important, that people would respond because it would build a culture of giving. And I will add there, as I have in the past, not just a culture of giving, but also a culture of asking. And I'll show you an illustration of that in a moment. 7% indicated a mixed reaction, that people would want to hear and know and learn. 12% didn't know. A small handful of people indicated that the current fundraising environment of the Israel emergency, which persists until now, it's still out there, that might be a bit of an obstacle, and then the final 10% said that would not be received. So we're starting with with a pretty decent and robust notion of having seen the campaign, and seeing in general terms where the campaign would go, based on that statement, how people feel that the community will respond, not just themselves. And then we introduced the dollars and cents. Do you believe that Beth Am Israel, as a collection of families and as an organized community, could successfully embrace and complete a $4 million campaign? And here we received a range of answers, with full knowledge, and listen, people understand, and some people articulated, listen, knowing what's out there, and knowing what things cost, $4 million in today's world isn't that much money. However, at Beth Am Israel, it's a pretty big number. And that was not lost on people. However, you see the initial yes of 42%, which is knowing how big that number is and what the impact that it might make at this particular congregation, and without the most recent history of fundraising at this level, you have to go back to the fundraising for the building, to have fundraising at this level in this community, and this community has turned over since that time. So you see 42% off the bat, 5% saying maybe, it's a little qualification. Some said, $4 million, about 5% said maybe 4 million is a bit rich, maybe 2 to 3 million, maybe a bit more achievable. 5% indicated yes, if it was explained well, again, coming back to the notion of a purpose and a plan and transparency and all that. 20% didn't know, they just didn't feel qualified to say how the community, or prepared to say how the community would respond. 18 said no, and without offering an alternative, and 5% said they needed to, if the community felt confidence, in the leadership and in the campaign, that it would enhance the readiness, the readiness of the community to rally behind. I will say that in this context, in the context of this question, that we did share with every interviewee, in full transparency, that we did run a wealth analysis on kind of a broadly stated wealth analysis, not any deep dives into any singular individual or its household, and so that empirically, there is the wealth exists to fund the $4 million campaign. So that and because we wanted to know, walking into this assessment, with the request to test the 4 million, that if what's the point of departure here? Is the capacity even there? And I could say with confidence that it is. But that's only a part of the answer. The other part is all of this that we're talking about, the intangibles, the connectivity, the interest, the inclination. And just because somebody has a lot of money doesn't make them a philanthropist. So that it's very important to to know the empirical facts, but also to understand the motivations behind behind people, and their inclination to participate. Okay, going forward, and then we asked if you were asked to consider a commitment to the campaign, what would be the most motivating, dollars aside, what would be the most meaningful motivation for you to say yes? 44% off the bat said I'm in. I don't need I don't need any additional motivation other than supporting this campaign because it's gonna invest in the strength and vibrancy of this congregation into the next generation. 26 said yes, but I need a clear and compelling case, and I need to understand precisely what this is all about. 17%, kind of a little bit more than that. I need to know more. 9% said I love the Torah, and 4% said that they're not in a position to say yes. And I think that's the same 4% that was reflected in the other. And I think that some of that 4% is persuadable. But I think this also says that it's a pretty good place to start from. Particularly when there isn't a whole lot of detail, that there's a lot of things yet to be determined, in terms of the details of the campaign and where the money's going to go and how the money's going to be managed. And when you're raising money for an endowment, there are all kinds of additional questions in terms of the structure of the endowment and how monies are going to be allocated and so on. So this is really not a bad place. I shouldn't say it in the negative. It's a pretty good place to start from. Donor recognition. That there is no, other than the plaque from the building campaign, which lists all the donors in alphabetical order. There is no real donor recognition that I could find, having been in the building. But we asked, we had to ask, what is the appropriate recognition for you and other donors? And the overwhelming response was, or the most significant response was, it's not part of our culture. It's not who we are. After that, it's not sure. So that you're starting with a with a lack of enthusiasm for donor recognition as a construct. And you see, as you go down the scale, that it's not needed, it's not necessary, it's not, that if we were to do something, we should do a donor wall. If we do something, it should be understated. And then it trailed off from there. And then the follow-on question was, would public recognition change your thinking about your giving? Would it be additive to anything that you would give? And overwhelmingly, the answer was no. 86% said no, automatically. 11% said, well, probably not, but if it was the right thing, it was tasteful and so on, maybe. And then we had a small contingent that said, well, maybe we should offer it. While we were talking about it, and particularly since there is endowment development and this, kind of, it's separate and different, but it can ultimately lead, dollars into the same place. Would you consider putting Beth Am Israel in your estate plans? Over half said yes, either they would or they already have. And 35 said maybe. 35 said yes. 11% said maybe, and 54 said no. That they would rather see themselves invest in the current situation, and ensure that the strength and growth of the congregation going forward, and rather than putting resources aside for another time. if this campaign is successful, which I presume and hope and reasonably confident that it will be, actually very confident that it will be, I suspect that will change. I also had, I recall specific responses from people that normally would not think about it, based on their age and stage in life, people who are in their 40s, for instance, or their 30s, and we're not yet thinking about those things as seriously as people, who are a bit older, and this was, and it was interesting hearing that from younger families, and that really spoke to the to the long-term notion, of folks around the community. And then we asked specifically, on a scale of, based on your own tzedakah, okay, based on your own personal charitable priorities, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, where does Beth Am Israel and this campaign rank on your giving priorities? And you see where this goes. I think, 20, I counted it before. I believe 25 out of 32 responses that we got to this, have it, over half. It's like 5 and 6 and higher. And you see it's weighted. Between 7 and 10. And this speaks very loudly in terms of the value that people place on the synagogue. And there are people that were capable of gifts of significance, as well as gifts of more modest amounts. But in terms of this speaks to commitment, and this is something to remember as we transition into the next phase. In terms of participation, would you participate in the campaign by joining a leadership team, taking on a role as a worker or a leader in some capacity? This was a place where, I spoke before about not just strengthening the culture of giving, but the culture of asking. This is where and I said we'll come back to that later. This is later. About 1/3 of the people indicated that they might. This is a little low, but it's not. It's not terrible. But it's a little low. Usually we're between 40 and 50% at this point, so that there's some work to do in this area. Would you ask other people for money? The response is pretty much the same. But then it turns around. Would you open your home? Would you open your home and host the campaign, essentially endorsing the campaign to a group of people that come into your home? You can't open your home and host a gathering where a campaign is presented to people without being a donor yourself and without endorsing the campaign in word and in deed. And whatever deficits need to be made up, among leaders and askers, that is made up in terms of what the connectivity is in people's hearts and minds, about this campaign and the impact that it's going to make. And this is a telling set of responses. We did ask people, as we transitioned into the final part of the assessment interview, if you were to make a gift today, snapshot in time, knowing what you know and knowing what's yet to be determined, which is everything has to be kind of solidified, and the campaign has to be the campaign case has to be formed and finalized. There was we worked on this, and for those who saw it last week, I left it in that form. It's basically 3 charts in one. On the left is under 10,000 up to 36,000. You see that there were any number of people that indicated $10,000 or less. And then we moved into the middle part is the ranges. All right, 25 to 50. It's the 75 is in there. That probably didn't fit into a range. 50 to 100, 100 to $1 million. There was one individual who indicated that I did ask about the notion of lead giving as a barometer of campaign success, and I said, there wouldn't it be neat, and a gift to 7 figures? And he said, I might be that person. And he said, but for now, I'll say between 100 and 1 million. And and I said, is that how you want me to put it down? And he said, yes. So that's why it's here. I suspect that the gift will not be 100. It may not be 1 million, but I suspect that it may be someplace in between. And we'll talk about that as we plan forward. And then you see others, at different levels of six figures. So that there's an interesting, distribution of prospective gifts. This is pretty, indicative. It's a little flatter. The pyramid's probably a little flatter than you would see in some other places. But it definitely positions us to a successful campaign. And it also shows that there are individuals and households that get it and that understand the importance of giving. And that's an important part of the campaign as we go forward into the next phase. So that also accounts for the wide range between 750 and basically 2 million. I would say we're probably looking at realistically, and having been in that conversation, we're probably looking at 750 to 1.4. It's probably based on experience, it's probably a better read on this, which is still pretty decent, which is still very, very good. Okay, in terms of lessons learned, that Beth Am Israel is loved and very important to participants, and the interviewees who are overwhelmingly committed to supporting the show and financially supporting this campaign. That was clear and unambiguous. But a well thought out plan is essential, as is fiscal responsibility. Particularly with the centrality of an endowment here, in terms of how it's structured, its restrictions or lack of restrictions, and clear, compelling communication. This campaign should be an expression of an inspiring vision for the future of the congregation. The different, as you might imagine, the different elements of the Torah, Ruach, and Limud campaign appeal differently to different people. Feelings were split on the Torah project, as you saw in the answers earlier. Many pointed to the lack of communication and understanding, and I think with clarity, that bridge, gap could be bridged. Excuse me. And the consensus was that it was crucial to use this effort, all right, to build a program to attract young families and to build that culture of giving and the culture of asking for the long-term well-being of the show. And communication is key at each level, on a positive. I'm not stating it as an overwhelming challenge. It's that successful campaigns require good communication, and clear communication, and a good plan, and that roadmap, and inspired leadership, and all the things that we all know. So recommendations. This is more of an encapsulation of where we were and where this all takes us. So the Torah, Ruach, and Limud campaign must be an inspiring vision for a vibrant future for the shul, which is clearly communicated through a variety of coordinated efforts. Prospective donors need to understand what they are contributing to and why, they expect transparency and fiscal responsibility. While the culture of Beth Am Israel is less geared towards recognition, PCA participants appreciate that donor recognition and stewardship is important in some form. And growing the pool of donors and leaders is also important. I think that the response, in terms of donor recognition, was to kind of the conventional tools, but that people do need to be acknowledged and feel that they're doing something positive for the congregation. Quality prospect and donor engagement will contribute to the success of the campaign, and it will strengthen, if done correctly, will strengthen the long-term relationship between Beth Am and its members. And a well-planned, well-communicated, and well-executed campaign will serve the needs and aspirations long-term, again, of the shul and its households. And okay, so is a $4 million campaign achievable? The important question. The Torah Ruach Limud campaign will be transformative for the congregation. There was a consensus that Beth Am Israel is at an inflection point and must take advantage of this moment and this opportunity. As I noted, we did report doing a wealth scan, so we know what the empirical objective capacity is. Lead giving is important, and that's why we asked the question about snapshot gifts and about lead donors and we have a list of individuals and families who people articulate. Didn't want to put it into the presentation. It's very confidential, but we will share it at the appropriate time and under the cone of silence. People of a certain generation will know what I mean. A consensus appeared around the $4 million target. There you go. A consensus appeared around the $4 million target, yet acknowledging the big number, as I said before, at Beth Am. Most felt that the community would be receptive and supportive of a campaign at that level, again with a clear plan and a roadmap. A majority said, as you saw, that Beth Am Israel philanthropic priorities, that they are ready to give, but had not been asked to give a capacity. All right. Again, the culture of asking, and have not been asked. Many have not been asked in a long time. But the notion was that people would be responsive. So is a $4 million achievable? There's talked about the consensus, but also the consensus for the need around the campaign to have a strong business case, effective messaging, and broad support from the inside out, the board, the leadership, past presidents, and the clergy. Several congregants with intention to give, and perceived capacity didn't answer the question about they just they said that they will definitely be donors, but they have to think about it, and didn't feel comfortable articulating, and wanted to make sure that everything was right. People, you assure them that this is all confidential, but everybody always has that little piece in their brain that says, maybe we're going to pick up the phone and call Donald tomorrow and tell him such and such. But it wasn't the case. And the broad support of this initiative should help the campaign grow the culture, that there is capacity among several families for significant support, and some was articulated, and we know that from the wealth scan as well. At the end of the day, we also need to understand that a campaign is a support activity. The campaign is legitimated by what it will do, and what it will enable. Because without an effective and passionate case, there is no campaign. So there needs to be a focus on membership, growing the community, and building the community around the thematics of the Torah Ruach Limud campaign, to position Beth Am Israel as a synagogue of the future. So projecting a goal, as I mentioned it with the executive committee last week, we did not feel comfortable yet articulating a $4 million goal. I think it's achievable. I would recommend a goal of 3 to 3.5 million, to be stated outward, and with the $4 million, among us, and then if we're in a position, then you can always expand the goal, raise the goal, as the campaign proceeds. Our experience is that donors, when presented the question of the Schnapptag gift, gave us the frame of reference, and they responded conservatively, as people typically do. Some held back, so that also gave us a bit of confidence as to where what the point of departure was. Even pulling back, as I said, on half of that, articulation, that it was, it was still leaving us in a very good position. And that lead gift, if that can be positioned at $500,000, will impact on the recommendation. And again, as we jump to the final point, that again, the right elements need to drive this campaign forward, not just a goal and not just, you know, a nice design, but clarity of purpose, transparency, vision for this campaign is a step forward, you know, towards you know, its role as a synagogue of the future. And the goal is achievable. You know, the goal of 3.5 million is eminently achievable, and I believe that a goal of $4 million is also achievable. But it's going to be, you know, it's going to be a challenge, but it's going to take some coordination, and it's going to take some you know, hard thinking and creative work. But that's the value of our partnership here, and that's what it's going to make. That's what, you know, is going to make it all happen. And based on the responses, you know, we put together this gift range chart, which hopefully you can see. And I did it on the basis of $3.25 million, just to show you, you know, kind of just pick the number, you know, but based on the nature of the responses that we got, you know, kind of where the natural breaks would be, and you know, this is predicated on you know, on you know, truly a small number of you know, lead and major gifts, of which we hope there will be more. You know, it's I think 42 you know, significant gifts, which is about a little over 10% of the congregation. You know, so it kind of fits into the 90-10 scenario that you see in, you know, oftentimes. But you also see the under 10, which you saw reflected in the chart earlier in the presentation. You see the meaning of that. You know, that's that you know, that is larger than you'll see, you know, proportionately in other congregations, and that's why I said that the pyramid's a little flatter than it might be otherwise. But it doesn't, you know, kind of step in the way of achievability. It's just going to require a campaign strategy which focuses on gifts at all levels, and not just the all important, you know, top 10%. You know, the campaign timetable, you know, I can run through it if you like. You know, just to, you know, quickly, that the first couple of months, you know, and we only did through 6 months of the campaign, because, you know, that what we achieve in 6 months will then frame what happens going forward, you know, in terms of, you know, how the activity is structured and planned, and so on, because the first 6 months are so critical. You know, the first, you know, the key items in the first couple of months was to determine the scope and details of the campaign. Obviously, you need to know what it is you're raising money for before you can raise anything, so that there needs, you know, clear purpose in terms of the endowment, dollar targets, and fundable items. That will enable us to finalize the case. Recruiting the campaign leadership team, you know, Bill and Annette, and Rabbi David and Donald cannot do it all by themselves. As much as you know, that would make things a lot easier, it's just not realistic, and there's a lot of work to do. You know, we need to put together a leadership team, and because the leadership team not only makes it achievable, it also involves people. It also gives people a sense of purpose and investment. We will prepare a draft for you, campaign plan and messaging strategy. But you know, it will be for you to review and hopefully accept, and you know, or make changes, or whatever it is that you'd like to do. We will we will set up the regular monthly communication, you know, that would come from the synagogue to the community. That even though this initial period is typically called, you know, in campaign speak, it's called, you know, the quiet zone, you know, the quiet phase. I always stress, and I've stressed with the working group, that this is the quiet and not the secret phase, and that they're, you know, given the emphasis that people have put on communication, it's very important that there be communication, because the last thing that you want is for somebody, the first time that somebody hears about this campaign, to be when somebody knocks on their door asking for a gift. And you know, I am recommending, we are recommending that rather than you know, a printed, you know, 10 color, you know, stapled brochure, that it be, you know, something that's digital, crisp, elegant, to the point, uh, that's printable. And so that if there is somebody out there that is not going to check it out online or look on the webpage, and there obviously needs to be a campaign webpage that's linked onto the main Betham website, and you know, all of that, the case for giving, all of the brochure items that would typically be there, from you know, from the leadership messages to, you know, it's 100th anniversary, so we want to have some retrospective as to the, you know, the key points of the campaign and why this campaign is so essential to drive the vitality of the congregation forward. You know, so that will be part of it as well. The business plan, the business case will also be on there, and we will take you through that. And you know, very important, and I mentioned it before, that this is the time where we prep for what we call the inside out ask, the 100% of the board, campaign leadership, and so on. That's so important to taking the campaign out into the community, you know, the congregational community, because if you approach a major donor and they say, well, is the board on board? You know, the board made this campaign happen. They need to take responsibility for it as well. You know, with full knowledge that on any board there's a, you know, a breadth of capacity, but every individual, every household at their own place. We will also prepare for you for your review and approval of gift acceptance and donor recognition protocols. And at the end of the day, it's whatever it is that the congregation will be comfortable with in terms of donor recognition, if at all. And you know, there's no doctrine on it, so we're not pushing any particular position on this. You know, it's manageable either way, but on the side of the gift acceptance, we want to make sure that we're clear, you know, from the board on down, you know, through the entire campaign execution, what kind of gifts, what assets will be acceptable, you know, as payment on a campaign commitment. You know, obviously you're, you know, largely focused on cash and cash equivalents, but you know, some people, you know, may have you know, real estate, pieces of art, you know, a condo in Miami, you know, who knows? And you know, we need to be able to say that yes, that is acceptable, this is not. And for what reason and why. And then you know, months four to six, you know, in this construct, you know, is where the execution, I put those 3 months in just to show you the transition from planning and kind of doing the inside out work and the design and all that, you know, into serious campaigning. You know, and there will be some significant money that is raised from the board and from the campaign leadership and past presidents and, you know, that whole cohort, you know, as it transitions out to the lead and major donors, so that there will be a head of steam that will be in motion as the campaign transitions, not yet into the public, but you know, kind of into the second half of that quiet but not secret phase. And you know, and just one disclaimer, is that we do not do graphic arts or web design, but we will provide all the content for that. And you know, you know, that the campaign records, you know, while we will maintain, you know, a running tally, the campaign records, the formal campaign records, need to be kept obviously at the synagogue office because that's where they belong. And you know, and that's you know, the extent of the disclaimer. And that, my friends, is the presentation. I apologize for speaking too quickly, but I wanted to make sure to get it all in. Are there any questions? And I'm going to take this down unless somebody wants to keep it up. And I'm, you know, and I will, you know, well, I'll take it down. So we can see everybody. Silence.
Oh, blown away. It was an incredible presentation. Thank you, Alvin.
My pleasure.
You know, based on history,
Yeah.
I think it's as close to what I would have drawn up on our history of giving. You know, the majority came from the middle, with a few from the top and a few from below. You know, people. I absolutely agree that we haven't asked. I don't know how successful I'm going to be, but also my intent was to go to people who used to be members of Beth Am Israel, who are not part of the campaign, but were part of enjoying the building itself. You know, that's just going to be some money. It's not going to be the big hits, but that's the overall intent. The history of Beth Am is exactly that. We have built buildings, but in my mind, we haven't been contributing to the soul and the spirit of Beth Am. That may be my tagline anyway.
No, it's very insightful and really, you know, having met with you know, with 30 plus individuals in household, that really that notion resonated. You know, I with the right messaging, this is very achievable. You know, and clarity of purpose. I don't want to minimize it, you know, but you know, with clarity of purpose, clarity of achievement, the value proposition, what's going to happen once this endowment is fully funded, what it means to have the Torah, you know, and how it all plays into the celebration of 100 years, and not to celebrate the past, but to use it as a platform for going forward, and the next generation. So, you know, that's and I do have to say, and I didn't say this, you know, in advance, you know, in advance of this presentation, Donald, and you weren't at the meeting last week. I did, you know, indicate that everybody that we reached out to, and you know, Karen did a super job in managing the process of scheduling, and the negotiation, just the negotiation of schedules, you know, in today's world is, you know, is really the wild card in all this. But people were lovely. You know, I can't tell you how many emails I saw, you know, because I was copied on some of those emails going back and forth. Oh, I'm so sorry. I've been so difficult to schedule, and you know, and you know, and you know, when we when you know, when the email initially went out, you know, with Lori's leadership on that, you know, that people began to respond, you know, independently without prompting, without follow-up. So you know, but people were lovely. They were absolutely lovely, and I don't say that you know, lightly. You know, people were terrific. Listen, we're difficult people, and people had issues and questions. But they were said in the, you know, in the context of love, and you know, that's most important. And even the most contrarian of contrarians, you know, spoke of their love of the congregation, and you know, was one of those people that showed up every Shabbat.
You're talking about Bill. You just said the contrarian of contrarians. I know it's Bill.
That's under the tone of silence.
The Torah campaign, I agree, it hasn't been, and it may be on purpose, because until I get that signature from the scribe, I've kind of been sandbagging that. But I see that as a very big instrument in this, that this is the part about the present. The endowment is about the future, but we have to give somebody the present, and that the meaning of signing that scroll that, you know, is now going to be passed on for generations. You know, it's often used, but it does apply door to door. Is absolutely in play here. And one of the thoughts was, as far as giving, is different levels of giving would have photograph taken as the family writes their name in that. You know, very different types of frame photographs, et cetera, et cetera. Another part of work would be You want to buy an 8x10? That's another $50.
But I just wanted to relate, just about the issue of the Torah. The objection to the Torah came from a lack of understanding as to where it all fits in. And I think that needs to be articulated and clarified. People would say, well, don't we have enough Torahs? Don't we have 5, 6 Torahs? And I said, I don't know, I've never looked in the ark, but probably, that sounds about right for a congregation. So why do we need another one? And I said, it's not a matter of needing another one. It's a matter of the symbolism of all of it. But we were honor bound to reflect the responses of the participants. So we had to put that in, but understand that that's mostly where that was coming from. The notion of, why do we need another Torah?
We really have to start messaging.
That's going to be part of what we're going to give them, the opportunity to write their own song.
Mhm.
It's one of their obligations.
Yeah, I'm not saying it can't
You
be
get it.
explained. I'm just saying,
Right.
yeah. Any other questions? Well, wow.
I muted myself so I wouldn't have all the background noises of 5 dogs.
Mhm.
Donald, when you're back, I want to get a meeting with you, Annette, and Jamil, the TRL committee. We need to talk about the passionate reason that people are going to want to participate. I've been thoroughly enjoying watching the last 3 weeks of the Harris Walls campaign. And I want to bring joy into this. I want this to be something that people feel excited about. Our statement of mission, vision, and purpose for this campaign is not clear. It is clear, but it needs to be so much stronger. So I'm just letting you know, I'm going to scomp up some of your time, some of the rabbi's time, and we need to get on this right away.
Right, and I'd love to be included in that if possible.
You will be.
Okay.
My time is your time, Bill.
Yeah. Thank you, Avram. Thank you
No,
for
thank
the
you.
presentation. I don't think you talk too fast. Donald, are you okay with that pace of presentation for the board?
That was an hour.
Oh.
It was about 50 minutes.
Yeah, we have to schedule. I may ask people, we'll get a lot of business out of the way before the board meeting starts. Maybe start as early as 6:45 if I can get a quorum in. And so if there's anything that, I'm looking over at the rabbi, we'll get the Devar in early. We'll get any of the good and welfare anyway, so we can be prepared for that part of the meeting. And
Yeah,
you do know that the cornerstone of my Cold Nidri speech, of course, is going to be the campaign and creating that passion, I hope.
Mhm.
That's part of my vacation.
Right, and for the board meeting, I intend on being there in person. So
And I will also. I'll
and
be
Karen will as well.
Great.
And so that it would be a different feel than doing it, on screen.
Yeah.
And I'll be there, obviously, to answer any questions that people have as
And this is this month's board meeting, right?
Right, the 28th.
any-
Bless you.
Bless you.
and there's also a narrative, a narrative report that we're, that is being finalized. It, reflects the same data, it's just in a different format. Okay.
Okay, Donald, I assume we do not have a large screen for everyone to look at the slide presentation at the same time. We'll be still working to their own computers.
For the board meeting?
Yes,
The board
well,
meeting?
is there a
No,
large?
there's a very large screen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we've.
Well, I don't know how you determine, it's not the size of the screen at Citizens Bank Park.
No, but
It's large.
everybody in the room can see it.
Yeah,
Yes, it-
Absolutely.
yeah. It's a 65-inch flat screen.
Oh, that's more than sufficient. More than sufficient. The most important thing for me is to be able to see the different colors of the boxes so I can make sure I'm saying the right thing.
There you go.
Yeah.
Are we okay? Are we done?
We're good.
Good.
Thank you, Avram. Thank you,
All
everybody.
right. Thanks,
thank you.
Avram.
Thanks,
Bye.
Okay.
Karen.
All right.
Well,
All right, take care now.
Bye-bye.